Day 2 of longer form content. Ate my eggs this morning at home, so gonna do my black coffee. If it's drinkable, let's see. Yeah, we can work with that. Might be here for a while, but I guess I got a lot to talk about, so that's good. Where to start? I guess what's on the tippity top of my head is the copy for my website, just getting the point across as simply as possible. And what I have now is a 3-step process, basically, like explaining what the web app actually does. And it's like something, track, iterate, maybe. I don't know. See, I can't even tell you, so it's not that clear. What I think I'm gonna pivot to, everyone's favorite word, pivot, is your skin getting better? Why? And that's just like 2 questions. That's basically what we're here to answer. The first one is what the machine learning model basically answers. The second one is what tracking answers, and then what our job as a platform is to help you figure out what's moving the needle and then do more things to clear your skin and do less things to make it worse. And yeah, I think that's clear enough. And then we go from 3 lines to 2 lines. So that saves me 1 whole line. That's like 30% less lines. Main focus of today, though, is not technical. It's going to be a day of intrinsic exploration. Some good words there. Been working on these accelerator applications for a couple weeks now, and by working on I mean looking at once a week, but the deadlines are coming up and I really need to get my act together with that. I have found I've gotten much better at clearly communicating succinctly, which is so valuable. No one has time to read essays on this stuff, and well, if I can't get it down to a sentence or 2, do I even know what the heck's going on? And it does take time. It's a lot more work to do that than to ramble. It's funny I say that as I'm kind of like rambling. I think these brain dumps are good for that, and that talking through it all, what sticks when I'm done will be what is actually important to me. So that's good. But the 3 accelerators I'm applying to are, first and foremost, Antler. They've got a 10-week program. I was on the fence about doing their Denver program or New York. And the rationale behind Denver, or maybe Boulder, sorry, not Denver, Colorado, yeah. So I've never been there, so like it'd be cool, but this isn't supposed to be a vacation, so yeah. But the real reason was that I like running this acting experiment. Maybe a change of environment would be an interesting variable to track, but I think that it'd be more valuable to prove that you don't have to move halfway across the country to clear your skin. would actually be better. Plus, like, just the network I've got going on here in New York would be foolish to step away from, albeit for 10 weeks. But then on the plus side, it'd be like full focus, no distractions whatsoever. God, I really don't know. I feel like the answer will come to me, and I feel like I'm leaning more towards New York for Antler, but I should decide that soon. You know what, by the end of the day, I'll have that decision made. Next is A4 Capital. They also have like a very early stage accelerator program, which is nice. And finally, South Park Commons, which I think is like the best name out of the 3, would look the best on my resume. Well, I suppose it doesn't really matter, a resume at this point. I guess it kind of does when it comes to raise money. I don't know. South Park Commons is interesting. I had an intro, or I met the head of community outreach or something at an event maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. She reached out to me and was like, let's grab coffee. And I was like, sure. And then she rescheduled 2 times, and the third time was like, hey, how about instead of coffee, you just come to this event? And that day, I was so heads down in my work. I didn't get a calendar notification or anything. I guess I must have forgotten to add it to my calendar, so I missed it. And then I messaged her. I'm like, hey, sorry, I couldn't make it. Can we still grab coffee? No response. And it's like, okay, you blew me off 3 times. And I was like, okay, that's fine every time. Guess that's the nature of these things. We'll see if any of this even matters. Just a funny little story. It's funny, I'm starting this not caffeinated, and by the end of this I'm going to be fully amped up and ready to go. At least this will be the way I decide where it is I'm going to go, like, with all this energy. And I think the accelerators are so important. Really, the question they all ask is just like, who you are, why should we invest in you? And I've got so many stories to tell, but they're all long. And I think it's just like, makes the most sense to just pick up from when I left my job. June of last year. And then the arc since, it's really been my opportunity to explore. And it's kind of led me here, which is cool. Started out getting the house rented. That's another one, like, I could tell that story in a couple pages, but a sentence or two. I think it's all right. It's not really important. I was chasing simpler TikTok. Conversation with Seth Godin really opened my eyes to the fact that I was powerless, unable to code, but I didn't realize it right away. So I still spent time trying to convince others to build it, but eventually came to grips with the fact that as I was, no one was willing to come on board, especially for a challenge of that magnitude. Most people just aren't ambitious enough. I thought it would be like the easiest thing in the world, but no one else seemed to agree. So I decided to teach myself to code. Fuck it, why not, right? And in November, when I essentially wrapped up landlording duties, got the lease signed, tenants moved in, I began to teach myself to code. And the way that I did that was I found a course on YouTube. The only reason I took it is because it said Stanford University, but I'm glad that I did. I built a game called Combo. It's like Wordle meets Set. Got it on the App Store. Took way longer than I thought. Every week I was like, oh, I'll be done with this game this week. And then like 4 months later, still building it. But by building, I've just gotten so much better. I actually understand how to code now, which I think would be really valuable for why, right? Now I can actually be in the arena with engineers as they build, as opposed to just like being fully reliant on them to do things. But built a game. Since publishing it, I just haven't had the motivation to get back to it. But I think what I've landed on is I'll just like put 30 minutes to an hour into it a day, just trying to ship little features so that it doesn't grow cobwebs. I do like it. I am proud of it. I would wish that more people would play. Just not sticky enough, and I think it's like the highest leverage things to get it to be stickier, or where I should invest my time, not like improving the tutorial which is actually what I'm doing right now, and I kind of broke it, which is annoying, but like the share message might be like the most important part of the whole app. Like, oh, go share this with your friends. Why would I do that? And it's the phrasing of it I'm trying to land on. I don't know, I think it's like a smartness thing now, right? It's like, what idea would stick in someone's head? Oh, I send you a score. Like, are you smarter than me? Well, if you can find that out in like 60 seconds, I feel like that'd be simple enough, maybe motivating. Show that, then like little things, putting a streak on the home screen, maybe some like medals, you finish first, second, third on the day, changing the buttons to black. It's like that change would take like 5 minutes to make, but the reason I haven't done it is because I'm like, I don't want to sit down for a whole day and do all these things. But if I just do like one or two of them, I think I could keep the app rolling. And then I think that also helps me, right? Since I'm going to be applying to these accelerators and saying that I built this app as my kind of what I did this year, although I did many other things. This is a really easy one to point to and be like, I didn't know how to do this, so I taught myself and I did this. Here it is, go play it. Just to have it like nicer than it is now would be a good investment of my time. So for those months that I was learning to code, it's really when I started to see life as a series of experiments, and coding was actually the biggest one at the time. And how I saw it was I should track everything that I did. I just think it'd be an interesting story. I knew that I was very ambitious and eventually would be building something huge to document that journey. I think it was a Hormozy quote. I haven't been able to find it since, which is, I guess, annoying, but also doesn't really matter. But it was like, I just hope that the next great founder documents their journey. And me being me was like, oh, that's me. Let me go document my journey. So I started keeping this lab journal, how I saw it, and just tracked everything I did, from books read to podcasts to videos to things I did, and diet, exercise. It got to be a little cumbersome, so I stopped, because it's just like a ton of work to have to like go into Notion every single time to organize my own achievements or to track the things that I wanted to track. So I started to play around with the idea of building that. And actually one of the biggest things with that is, one of the biggest motivators was that I was really curious what other people were doing. Like what are the other people as motivated as myself? Like, what are they reading? What are they watching? What are they building? And I didn't like that everyone just like had their own setup. Like, oh, I have my Google Docs, or oh, I have my Notion, or so on. And we don't share or collaborate. I think it'd be way cooler if we could see what others were doing. So then I started to play around with the idea of how to do that. And I was like, oh, I'll just build it. It'll be so easy, right? Just like my approach to everything. I realized that it wasn't so easy. It's like, where do you start? How do you get anyone using it? I'm not gonna be able to build a better note-taking app than Google Docs or Notion. Just like, wouldn't quite be there. I think the idea holds some water, but the limitations well, let's just say there's a lot of technical limitations. So I was chewing with this idea of making self-exploration collaborative, self-growth, right? This journey of life. Life is a series of experiments, continuing to build the game. What is it? And I wish I had a better story for this, but I can't remember exactly what it was. It might have been when I was reading The 4-Hour Body. The intro just like gave me goosebumps. Basically, someone told Tim Ferriss, like, who at the time was considering getting a PhD, that he'd be much better suited outside of academia. You can basically do a lot more good outside the system than you can inside it. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. How do I do that? I have this idea of collaboration. And then I was like big on biohacking. I had a crazy diet, and I really just honed in on acne. It just seemed to make sense as something I could like biohack. And I was like, oh, that'd be an interesting story. And again, I wonder what others are doing. And then I realized that the power of the data set we'd be able to build by working together, basically unlike anything in academia or anywhere else for that matter. And then just had a series of realizations about how academic research is done. My time even working in a research lab just being like total nonsense. And it's just like all of these engineers, and they just make their lives so complicated for no reason. And this being an example of that, I think the solution's fairly simple. There's obviously complex pieces involved, but big picture is just work to solve your own problem, study it, figure out how, and then share with others. So I've been on my own acne journey for a while, building out my journal, building out the web app and such. So it's kind of where I'm at now. There's like little details though in the past year which I don't think are as relevant. I just don't think they fit in an accelerated application for this. But they do kind of highlight my grittiness, and it's like, I know that I have that. Like I ran a marathon with a broken foot. It took me 9 hours, but like other people don't know that. And I don't know how to communicate that. Maybe that's just like a one-liner in there. Like for example, I started attending networking events to find people to help me build what I wanted to build, and then volunteered, stole the mailing list, and started hosting my own to make money. Like, is that gritty? Is that scrappy? I don't know. I mean, yeah, but does it fit in an application like this? I guess what it really comes down to is the story. Like, what is the arc? Right. So when I quit my job, where was I? I knew that I had something I wanted to do. And it was so pressing for me that I was willing to leave my job to do it, but I didn't know how. I didn't know enough. So I really had to spend my time learning. And how did I learn? By talking to people, most of whom said I was foolish and should do something else, and so on and so on. And me being stubborn was like, no, you're wrong, I'll prove you wrong. Right, but not so stubborn that I'm still working on that idea and not having made any progress. Stubborn in that I believe in myself. So okay, I didn't know what I was doing. I wanted to do something big. I had these ideas I thought were great. I still think they're great. I just think that health makes more sense to go after first now, funny enough. So I slowly started to learn about the world, about this world, I should say. I knew a lot about the world, but this startup world, I guess. Really, one of the defining moments was that conversation with Seth, because I had read his books, and basically they said like all the things that I had been thinking, right? We're all artists, we're all great, we all have this potential, and so on. And I was like, oh, perfect, like this guy will love what I want to do, and we'll just like do it. And then talking to him, it was just like the total opposite. And I remember leaving that conversation like, damn, now what? I was like kind of lost, but I overcame. I was like, oh, it's fine, like on to the next one. But I think it did stick with me with time. It's like that approach just like wasn't gonna work. So I just had to figure out how. Did learn a lot. I did collaborate with different people, tried to bring them on board, learned that people will promise things and not deliver, and so on. think it's the start of the story is very simple. I left my job. I wasn't satisfied. I was doing nothing. I was getting paid to do nothing. I was getting paid to get dumber. Honestly, fuck it. The last time I applied to these, I have my own way of thinking, my own way of speaking, and then you show it to enough people, and they'll just like mold you into something you're not. So I'm just gonna be like as genuine to self as possible. So like it's that simple. I quit my job because I was getting paid to get dumber. Why? I had huge ambitions. I wanted to take down TikTok because I saw it as the lowest hanging fruit at the time. I still think that it is. I can't wrap my head around the fact that no one's taking it on. Like clearly Instagram Reels exist and YouTube Shorts, but those are totally different from TikTok. Anyway, so I set out the grandest, most ambitious goal, and I think that was valuable for a couple of reasons. One, it like really forced me to, like, if I'm gonna chase the biggest thing possible, it's like, how do I get there? So that was valuable. Okay, quit my job. It's getting paid to get dumber. Had the grandest ambition possible of building a simpler American TikTok. Didn't know how, so I explored how. While doing this, my full-time job essentially was the house. So how do I slip the house in? I did have to do a lot. So I did electrical, new kitchen, roof, what else? Yard. There's like the little things. I don't think I can mention the little things. It would just be too long of a list. I'll say it like that. I assumed landlord responsibilities for my parents who moved away, but didn't take the steps necessary to get it rented. And within 3 months, that's perfect. Within 3 months, I did this, this, and this. Tenants moved in November. Along the way, I spent my time exploring and speaking, notably Seth Godin, who I thought would come on board and that would be that, but it was the total opposite. Realized that I had to change my approach. So when the house was rented, I said, I have all of this time I am going to dedicate to learning to build so that I can build it and just prove the world. Along the way, I started tracking my experiments. I took this course. I built this game. And I realized what I really wanted to do. I realized that health just made sense as a step for where I am. Went after acne, and that's where I'm at right now. Does that have a narrative structure to it? Does that show growth? Yes, before I had the most ambitious dream and no real way of achieving it now. So I taught myself the skills necessary to do it. I found something more reasonable to start with. I think that shows growth. I don't know. I guess I should highlight my determination somewhere along the way. There needs to be some other showcase of my own value, right? So I have my master's in biomedical engineering. That shows smartness. I wanted to do this. That shows ambition. Maybe I could talk about some of the hands-on things I did at the house to show that like I'm in the weeds. Maybe the networking thing shows that I'm in the weeds. It's like, okay, I have all these things. How do I demonstrate that? Like, oh, maybe I just talk about my diet. Maybe my diet shows how much I care. It's like I eat fish and beans for every meal every day to accomplish my goals. Like, I think that's the end of the story. Is like my own personal metamorphosis over this year. Where am I now? Here. I have some users, and I will put myself through whatever is necessary to come out the other side. Okay, I think that's a good structure. I think today's a really good day to do this. Really never done it before, but essentially have like intentions for the next year. And I really did quit my job not knowing what was what, believing in myself obviously, but I mean, that exploration has been so valuable. I like to say that without being lost, you can't be found. It's definitely lost. And now it's time to be found, to start to move the world. Otherwise, I'm just like la-di-da living in fantasy land. Right now, it's like, okay, you're 25. Make this dream real. Like, do the things. Like that, just do. Which raising money seems to be necessary. Absolutely, no questions asked. Procrastinated it by thinking that it wasn't and saying, oh, I'll just be cash flow positive. But if I'm just cash flow positive, like lean startup being it, even if I bring in $100,000, I can't hire 3 engineers with that. I can only, even if I pay myself $40,000, which I'm more than happy to do, but it just wouldn't allow me to accelerate, and I need venture money to accelerate. I think the idea is so solid. All that's really necessary is to prove traction. So everything I've done proves that I can get it here. I know so much about this. I know enough about this stuff. So it's like, okay, we give you money. Like, will you be able to figure it out? Well, he got this far without any money. So that's good. That's compelling. I guess the real question is of convincing the investors of how fucking huge of an opportunity this is, which I think is in the majillions of billions. I think it's enormous. I think it's redefining an entire industry, one of the most valuable industries in the world, health. Like, we can, through a consumer app, improve everyone's health. And like, if that's not valuable, I don't know what is. I do think that the focus has shifted, where so much of this past year was spent learning, and I'm by no means an expert in any of this, but I've learned enough that it's time to focus on higher leverage skills of building, and building requires capital, and capital requires investors, and raising is a totally different game from the one I've been playing, but I think it is one that I will excel at. The hardest part is getting in the room with these people. The second we're there one-on-one and I have eye contact and I can speak, I don't see any trouble. I firmly believe. Do think that don't care nearly as much about it. But in order to accomplish the things I do care about, it is necessary. So, what do I need the money for? Speed, duh. How does one accomplish speed? I need an iOS engineer. I need a fucking great iOS engineer who preferably can do web as well. Back end, I have someone. Data science, but I need money to bring her on. And then me, like I do everything. Like I'll fucking put in 200-hour weeks if that were possible. And I'm good enough at all the different things where if I have someone who's like really good at the thing, then like we'll just go ham. Do you think that the technical is so necessary? I think that I'm good enough at telling the story. I haven't been able to because I have to spend so much of my time learning, building, juggling the other things. Well, that's it. Coffee's done. Today's ramble. All good. See you tomorrow.